So first I am going to add the liquid tempera paint, and then I'm going to apply the tempera powder paint over the liquid tempera paint. Lori, you're starting with putting the tempera paint on what you've just drawn, and then you're going to add water to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Not quite knowing yet how much water, if I wanted to fill the entire piece with blue. For the water, I have decided to just use a large paintbrush and just do some abstract additions and see where I want to go from there.
To start off, we are just drawing, and I'm still working on mine, getting ready to add the tempera paint, and I'm just making sure that my starfish are overlapping.
After adding the dry tempera paint with the paintbrush, I am now dipping the paintbrush in water and adding it to the dry tempera paint to create a watercolor effect. With the dry tempera powder, I'm dipping a dry brush into the powder, and now I'm going to tap the stick of the paintbrush to create to make the powder land in small spots onto my jellyfish.
That is a cool technique. I like that. It's almost like splatter paint, and then when you add the water to it, it's gonna blend in with the watercolor effect to make it look a little bit splattered and a little bit mix of watercolor.
Yeah.
Like that. Because we're working on a theme which is camouflaged in, and the main purpose of us drawing our objects to kind of create a background to camouflage them into what we're doing, I've added lines, and I've used the lines so that it kind of accentuates areas like as if you were looking at camouflage. And I have one more area that I'm going to work on, which is right here. And what I've done is I've just skipped over every other line. So we'll see how this looks.
In order to make my starfish bolder and add lines to my drawing, I just went over the starfish that I sketched out with Sharpie.
Mixing 3 dropperfuls of the dry tempera powder with 3 dropperfuls of water, you can make a liquid tempera paint. Having done that, I took my dropper and I soaked up the paint and used it to create spots on my jellyfish. And if you get too much water, you can actually press the dropper and soak up the water.
So after drawing my starfish, I used the tempera paint to fill them in different colors, and I used an angled brush to go over the lines in a deeper color. And yeah, that concludes our demo for today.
Welcome to the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday podcast. We are at Friday, and I am Camille, the podcast host and CEO of MStar Arts Creative. And I'm here today with our artist facilitators, Mary and Lori. And we're wrapping up our demo, kind of having a conversation about how we felt the demo went. And we're hoping to get some feedback for everyone who gets a chance to watch the demo, and anyone who is interested in participating. Again, if you're interested in participating, subscribe to the MStar Arts Creative YouTube channel and comment us, and we will invite you into the studio. Right now we're informal, so formally we will launch our podcast in July, but this is kind of behind the scenes of what goes on to get our podcast ready. And then when we're podcasting, we'll be live in the Edge Studios in San Francisco. And we will be inviting conversation and artists to talk about some of their art projects, some of the museums they work with, and some of the locations that they find are the most inspiring to them. So I'm going to ask Mary and Lori, what did you like most about the material component of the demonstration today? So one thing that we worked with was tempera paint, and that's what we're going to be working with along with chalk, sand, and distressed oxide. So out of those materials that we've kind of tested and experimented with, and we're working our way into the next demonstration, which did you like the most, and what technique did you use when you were experimenting or applying that to the project we did today?
I really liked using the tempera paint. I like that, I feel like there's a lot of variation with it because it's hard to get the exact same amount of powder or water each time you use it, so there's kind of variation naturally. And I would say the only kind of technique I used was outlining things with extra powder after I already used it before to create more boldness or shading.
Okay, it's like the lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked using the pastel chalk. You can blend it in various ways. I use my finger, I use Q-tips, the brush, and I just love the versatility, and it somehow kind of, in some ways I found, gave kind of a watercolor effect. And I liked experimenting with the dry tempera paint because it's versatile. You can mix it with water, you can use the dropper, you can use a paintbrush, you can mix it with white tempera paint for a thicker effect, and it was fun to explore the different results from those different techniques.
Yes, and I enjoyed incorporating the Sharpie marker. I know that's a minuscule piece of drawing and painting and texturizing. But for some reason, back to what Mary said about accentuating the lines, that Sharpie marker really helps you pop out your lines and define your shape. Our theme for this virtual open studio that's coming up in July is Waterways, the water that divides us, connects us. And we're focusing on oceans, lakes, and rivers. And within doing that, we're incorporating in the pattern of camouflage. So today we also did a little bit of drawing, and we were trying to kind of brainstorm, how do we get started in putting together a piece that camouflages some of the pattern that we're bringing in. And one technique we used was to put the pen or pencil on the paper and connect lines without picking up the pen or pencil. So I think that was challenging, as in the sense that we were only able to get a portion of that done, that we found that we had to lift the pen or pencil up off the paper to add in the other elements of camouflage. What do you guys think about how that strategy worked for you when trying to create the camouflage print as the backdrop?
It took me, I started over a couple times. I liked the technique of not lifting the pen off the paper. But I think the reason why I ended up starting over was because there was less control. When I can take my pen off the paper and stop and take a look, then I can decide what I want to do next and what my next step will be and try to vision it going forward. I found less control in that way when I didn't lift the pen off the paper.
I think it's a really good thing to try, because I also agreed that I struggled with not having the same amount of control, but I think it's something good to try and practice so that you can get more used to it. I also think it maybe works better for some shapes over others, because like I was doing starfish and they're more angular and it's hard to like connect that, but doing something like more rounded like jellyfish or normal fish even is maybe something that's just more suitable for that approach.
Yeah, that's cool, because I used a pattern, a squid, and I patterned the squids, which kind of have the same shape as a jellyfish, and the tentacles are much different than a starfish. So to fit in with our theme, because we're using the ocean, lakes, and river, we're using sea animals as opposed to land animals, and we have the objective as the water. Whether it's underneath water, whether it's by water, we have to take into perspective how all of that fits in. Not to mention that we're using camouflage pattern and going with camouflaging in. So that's kind of our approach, our strategies, and our techniques that we used. And when you get a chance to watch the demo, you can connect this conversation to some of the aspects that we talked about and some of the techniques that we showed throughout the demonstration. We will be back, as I mentioned, in July, and we'll have a full-fledged podcast and virtual open studio where you can connect with us. If you'd like to participate, please email me at mstarartscreative@gmail.com, and we would love to have you as guests in our studio. Again, thank you for listening to the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday podcast, and we will see you soon.